The Malaysia-China Chamber of Commerce (MCCC) was established in 1990 as a non-governmental, non-profit, multi-ethnic and independent business association. MCCC provides a dynamic platform for Malaysian and Chinese entrepreneurs to create a mutually beneficial environment for business cooperation, enhancing the national economy and boosting enterprise development.
马总总商会创会的前辈一开始就给我们这个商会清楚的定位，它是设计马来西亚各族的商家有兴趣到中国经贸和投资的一个组织。未来的两国的一个发展的新动力，必然是来自高科技，包括于人才的培养。
马中总商会青年团是在2003年4月份成立，并在2018年我们改名为青年企业家委员会青企会，以更贴近企业家的形象。作为青年的商业平台，青企会也通过举办各种各样的活动，让他们装备好自己，迎接更多的商机。
我觉得21世纪女企业家通过这个平台走出马来西亚，然后走入全中国。我们不只是要学习如何做一个成功的女企业家，更重要的是我们要如何成为一个更有价值的女企业家。
As a platform for connecting private enterprises and government resources, the MCCC has been maintaining close contact with the government departments of the two countries to ensure the exchange of resources and projects, domestic and foreign investment opportunities, encouraging and implementing the international expansion strategy.
马中关系源远流长，经过了45年的这个紧密合作，经贸之间的这个成长，马中的关系呢更上一层楼。我们在未来展望双边友好邦国的关系，朝向新的里程碑迈进。
As a platform for international interaction, the professional teams of the association and the 9 state administrative branches have successfully encouraged numerous numbers of Chinese investors to collaborate with local entrepreneurs over the years.
MCCC being a focused China-Malaysia trade organization, it opens up a new avenue for us to look at trading with China. China is a country that we cannot ignore. It's humongous and the trade opportunities are big.
MCCC not only enables Malaysian entrepreneurs to experience the prosperity of Malaysia-China business, but also enables the Chinese entrepreneurs to experience the diversity of Malaysian culture. This has boosted the confidence of cooperating with local businesses, therefore strengthening trade development. In order to truly understand China's economic status, MCCC led local entrepreneurs on a visit to the commercial hub in Nanjing, China, and to meet the local entrepreneurs there. MCCC started a course related to the investments in China and Malaysia, organizing the One Belt, One Road English Forum. MCCC also organized a Greater Glory 45th anniversary of Malaysia-China diplomatic relations to celebrate the close relations and the rich historical ties, to further encourage the economic development and maintain the high accelerated growth between Malaysia and China.
马中总商会自1990年成立以来，积极地发挥桥梁和纽带的作用。今天的中马关系已经进入了新的历史阶段，必将迎来更大的发展机遇和更广阔的发展空间。
The rapid growth and increase of business activities in China make it a globally coveted market. Malaysia's strength lies in its stable, growing economy and multicultural environment.
3, 2, 1.
对于马中总商会未来的发展，马中总商会一定要尽量的有个机制来个授权给我们的各个委员会、各州的州分会，让他们有这个领域、有一个舞台去表现他们各自的才华。这一点是我们这个总商会会成功的一个要素。
Regardless of the business nature, choosing only the strongest and advanced platform is the most effective method to venture into any foreign market.
Hello, everyone. So, my name is Shahreen and I'll be the moderator for today's session. First and foremost, let me welcome everyone to the Malaysia-China Chamber of Commerce Roundtable Seminar. And today's session is about Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP in short. We have today two great panelists, Dato M. Supperamaniam, who is our ex-ambassador to the World Trade Organization, and also Tan Sri Dato Thian, who is currently the president of the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers. You won't get any better than this, very experienced government servant and an industry captain. So we'll be talking about RCEP and what it means and what are the challenges and how we should prepare ourselves. But before that, a bit of housekeeping. Please have all your microphone on silent if you have not done so. First. Secondly is throughout the session, you can submit your question via the chat box. And what we will do is each panelist will have 20 minutes time to talk about the subject. At the end of that 40 minutes, we're going to have a 30 minutes session on discussion. And that's where we will try and answer as many questions as possible. And I hope we can have a very informal and very casual, hopefully entertaining session for everyone. And hopefully we can learn something by the end of the session today. Now, before I proceed, allow me to welcome Datuk Tan Yu Sing, the president of the Malaysia-China Chamber of Commerce, to say some welcoming remarks. Datuk Tan, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sharon. Distinguished speakers, Tan Sri Dato So, and also Dato Supperamaniam. And of course, MCC, our EXCO, our member, ladies and gentlemen. I'm indeed very honored to be able to speak a few words here When we talk about RCEP, we cannot forget that actually in the mid-90s or even later 90s, actually is our Malaysia, then the Prime Minister, Tun Mahathir, who started the idea about 10+3 East Asia Caucus Group. And that idea did not get on the ground because due to some geopolitical reason, the 10 ASEAN countries were quite ready, but the +3 did not manage to get their support. Now, anyway, that was not on, but you can see that the ASEAN initiative, this 10+5 RCEP, it is a renewed initiative by ASEAN as a group, and it is, I'm indeed very happy for a country, for this region, that RCEP is already signed off, and also the different countries are already in the process of trying to approve it. Now, this is a collective effort. I mean, we must emphasize it is initiated by ASEAN country. It is a collective effort for ASEAN countries to secure their own resilience in handling the social marginalization, the economic collaboration, also a platform to look at the potential commercial conflict, how to manage it. So their objective is clear. I think they want to further integrate the member economies, of course, not just ASEAN, but extend to the +5. They also want to promote the openness and the globalization. In a way, it's clear support to the trade internationalization. This foundation is a new foundation for new regional partnership compared with TPPA, APEC, all the others. But this is the first regional foundation other than ASEAN that ASEAN country is at the driving seat. Also, they have actually established this framework. Potentially can handle maybe water security, maybe disastrous governance, issue that one country can solve, and you need a regional effort. Although they have just started and then still in the process of finalizing, but I can see there are already a few achievements from my own reading. Such a diverse group, this 10 countries within ASEAN, we ourselves are already quite diverse, culturally, religion, language, but such a diverse group plus the other 5, but we are able to get together. And that means that everybody feel that we want a free trade. We want to talk about internationalization of trade. It is also, as I say, is an effective platform for all the different stakeholder collaboration. And is this regional architect to facilitate more economic integration. And also, I mentioned just now, facilitate dispute management. So all in all, they have already started to create the administrative secretary and focus mainly on the actual market opening and things like that. Of course, the last point I want to highlight is when we talk about supply chain in this borderless world, one country is actually very not really enough. So we need a very efficient regional, and then getting all these the different countries to work together, because the whole supply chain you need effort more than one country. So for us, ASEAN +5, it is presenting to us, to Malaysian, a great opportunity of business, of trading, of even extending into people-to-people relationship and things like that. So I'm indeed on MCCC behalf, I'm indeed very happy under our Sean leadership that our investment subcommittee have initiated this webinar. And thank you very much for our 2 distinguished speakers to be able to be here. And I as Sean have informed me that this is a series. You look at roundtable series. So it is more than one because RCEP is here to stay and it's just the beginning, it's not the end. So we expect a lot of new idea, new information, new discussion necessary. And you can be assured that MCCC will continue to have such a platform to provide our service and for our member and public at large. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Datuk Tan, for very interesting introduction. Give a bit of historical perspective before we kick off. Now, before we start, before I give the floor to Dato Supperamaniam and Tan Sri So, I understand that we have quite a vast audience, so I'm going to take a few minutes just to give a bit of baseline on what we are talking about. What is RCEP? RCEP stands for Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. It is an agreement between ASEAN member states and the Free Trade Agreement FTA partners. And therefore, you have 10 ASEAN member countries, which is basically Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam on one hand. And you have China, India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. There are 6 other FTA partners. RCEP was first introduced on the 19th ASEAN Meet in November of 2011. That's 10 years ago. But since then, November 4th of 2019, India decided to pull out for various reasons, and our panelists will be able to enlighten us more on why. So now what we have is 10 plus 5. 10 ASEAN members plus China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. So it's a multilateral free trade agreement. It's not a country to country, it's a regional bloc. So these 15 countries account for 30% of the world's population. That's about 2.2 billion people. And also 30% of the global GDP. That's 26.2 trillion US dollar as of 2020. So it's a very, very significant economic bloc. Okay, it is the biggest trade bloc in history. Okay, so RCEP was signed on 15 November of 2020, end of last year, and it's been accepted by ASEAN. And it is expected, in 20 years, when it gets enforced, it will eliminate about 90% of tariffs and import. So it's a very, very significant impact. Yeah. Not only that, it will establish common rules on e-commerce, trade, intellectual properties, rules of origin, and so on. So it's a much bigger than just about trade and investment. That's what RCEP is. Where is RCEP now? As it stands, out of that 15 countries, 3 has ratified, Singapore being first, April of 2021, Singapore signed, ratified. China came second after that in April 15th of 2021. And recently, Japan has also ratified. Malaysia, on the other hand, is looking forward to ratify this by end of the year or latest first quarter of next year. That's where we stand. Okay, so now RCEP will come into force 60 days after you ratify, or it also requires at least 6 ASEAN countries plus 3 of the ASEAN free trade members. So 6 plus 3, once all of that is ratified, then RCEP will kick off. So currently we have only 3 and Malaysia will sign. So, there's no definite date yet, depending on how fast everybody sign up and ratify. But you will see that it's coming very fast in the next 1 year. A lot of countries has already agreed to sign on. And it's just a question of now us ratifying the whole document. So with that understanding, allow me to introduce Dato Supperamaniam. He will be our first panelist. And Dato Supperamaniam has a long history, 33 years in the government. Yeah, his background is economics from University of Malaya. He was the Deputy Secretary General for MITI. And in 2000, he became the ambassador and permanent representative of Malaysia to the World Trade Organization in Geneva. Now, he has participated in many senior official meetings, summits, ministerial conferences, the G77, APEC, Indian Ocean Rim, UNCTAD, and ASEAN. So you get someone who is very, very experienced at the government level, and we will have the benefit of Dato Supperamaniam to give us a bit more understanding about RCEP and the implication to our country. With that, Dato Maniam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shahreen, for your kind introductory remarks about myself. First of all, I really want to take this opportunity to thank the Malaysian-China Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to be a panelist, and I feel it's a great privilege actually, and to share with you and with the participants, of course, my thoughts on RCEP, which I believe is a very important government public policy initiative in the context of the evolving economic architecture in the region. It's very important that we know what this RCEP is about and what implications are. And but I must say that since the participants are mainly from the business sector, I'm not going to delve too much on the technicalities of the agreement, because I've been given 20 minutes and that's a pretty short time.
Yes.
So I'm trying to sort of focus my presentation in such a way that it is directly relevant to the business community. I'm not going to talk about the general aspects of the agreement, the provisions and so on, but Dr. Shahreen, you have alluded to some parts of it. Anyway, now, why is it so important? Why is it important for RCEP, for the business community in the first place? Why do we have to go into a RCEP when we have got bilateral free trade agreements, we have ASEAN plus free trade agreements, and many other agreements where all the 15 countries are already participating? Very interesting question, and I think that the business community will want to know. And my answer to that question is that the reason why there was this initiative called Regional Comprehensive Policy, because the ASEAN +1 FTAs, which is also an agreement between ASEAN and major trading dialogue partners, did not function well. It was not so effective in terms of promoting regional integration. It was not very effective in terms of promoting intra-regional trade. And in a way, it also did not contribute very much to the strengthening of the regional supply chain production networks and all that. All simply because they all were different agreements. There was no consistency. The commonalities were not there. Rules were different. Tariff schedules were different for each of the countries. And I know in that kind of a situation, it's very difficult for business community to operate, because it sort of raises doubts. There's no predictability, raises the cost of transaction, trade costs, etc., etc., etc. So I think it's a very important thing that ASEAN took the initiative to establish this RCEP, which I think is laudable and very important. But I must at the outset say also that Malaysia has a critical role in terms of ratifying this agreement, because I believe it's an ASEAN initiative. It's important for ASEAN, and therefore ASEAN together with others must show and demonstrate the leadership and commitment to get this through. Because without the ratification, it's not going to be implemented. And for Malaysia in particular, it's very important because it will send a very positive signal to the rest of the world that we are open to trade. We want to do business with the rest of the world. Despite the COVID situation, we are for trade creation, growth of trade. We do not believe in unilateralism. We do not believe in protectionism. And therefore, the RCEP is indeed, will send a very strong signal, and we are in a good position. Now, why is RCEP important to business? Now, as I said, there were some differences in the earlier agreements, and this is important for the business community for reasons of facilitating trade. as a region-wide agreement, it will have a significant economic and trade impact on participating countries because it's so huge. As Dr. Shahreen, you mentioned, it's very huge, covering a large population in terms of size and so on and so forth in terms of trade. And I also believe that RCEP, when implemented, if effectively implemented, it can be an important recovery tool against the COVID pandemic. In the sense that it will ensure opening up of markets, sustain and strengthen the uninterrupted supply chain network. Very important. And the elimination of 90% of the tariffs is a very important and overall 20-year period is also important because it sort of reduce the cost of trade, trade costs, as well as prices of products, which are important for business community. They want to be competitive. They want to sell their products. It will reduce. And also, you must remember that the pact has a lot of trade and investment facilitation measures, which will sort of remove some of the impediments to investment, to attracting investment, or even to promote trade, for example. Now, so I believe that these two components, will play a critical role in terms of expanding intra-regional trade, have an impact on and strengthen production networks, and more importantly, it will sort of enhance the competitiveness of the region. Now, another important aspect that our business community will be very interested in knowing about the RCEP is the creation of common rules of origin. This is very important because compared to ASEAN +1 FTAs, they all had different rules of origin for products. They all had different standards. Compliance was difficult. How could business community take advantage of the opportunities when you have this kind of a spaghetti bowl phenomenon, multi-layered kind of FTAs with all kinds of different standards in terms of regulations, regulatory reforms, in terms regulatory practices in terms of SPS, phytosanitary measures, technical barriers to trade, and so on. All were different. So the creation of common rules of origin is very critical, very important because it makes it very easy for companies to ship their products, between the RCEP countries, right, at a very little cost. More importantly, common rules of lower the costs of companies companies with supply chains which stretch across Asia. And this is very important because MNCs, large companies, and so on, when you have common rules of origin, it helps reduce the transaction costs, as I mentioned earlier. Easy for them to relocate, easy for them to invest. So we must capitalize on this, and I think these are some aspects. I'm not going to talk about a lot, but these are some major provisions of the agreement which will definitely appeal to the business community. So, and then coming back to what is the impact of RCEP on Malaysia, for example? I mean, econometric studies have shown that there'll be some gains, there'll be some gains like, 0.8 to 1.7. I do not attach a lot of importance to these econometric studies. So for business people, what is important? How do you translate the opportunities that will be generated by the agreement into commercial opportunities? How will you be able to forge partnerships, collaborative initiatives with business community within the region of 15 countries and so on? And for Malaysia, the impact is going to be quite big because already our trade with these 40 other countries in RCEP constitutes about 58% of the total trade. Exports about 56.7%, and then imports about 59.6%. So you can see, it's quite large. It's quite large, and the impact will definitely be significant because there will be potential for increased commercial opportunities and partnerships, for sure. Better market access, for sure. And opportunities in e-commerce, yes, provided we have the framework in place, we have the capacity to take advantage of opportunities coming out from e-commerce. And of course, there are also a lot of technical and cooperation provisions which can help us build the capacity, the productive capacity, competitiveness of our companies. Not all companies are going to benefit. There will be some who will be marginalized, who will face the competition, increasing competition. So I think it's important, for Malaysia, the impact. Now, will Malaysia gain or lose overall? I'm an optimist, and I'm optimist in the sense that overall Malaysia will gain. Of course, there will be increasing competition. Some will find it difficult. It'll be a challenge. We need to work together with the government to ensure that they are helped, they're supported, and they're strengthened. For example, what are the companies which will, I mean, will have a mixed impact, you know, what kind of companies will benefit? For sure, the telecommunication, banking and finance, and consulting agencies will benefit quite a lot, for sure. Now, food, beverage, industry, chemical products, rubber products, plastic products, machinery and equipment, electrical products will also benefit because we have the revealed competitive advantage for these sectors. So we can move on. But prospects for textiles, garments will dampen due to competition from low-cost suppliers. You have countries like Vietnam, you have Thailand, you have Indonesia, China. Is a big threat for them. That's definitely be dampened. Timber products will also face intense competition. But overall, I believe Malaysia stands to gain. The cost will be minimal, but as I said, the government policy responses was besides it will help. It will help. Now, finally, I want to come back to talk about, what do we have to do to move forward? What are the expectations of the private sector? Surely the private sector has a lot of expectations which they want the government to fulfill. Now, for example, I think one important area is, and the companies have always said this, they're very unhappy about red tape, behind the border bashes, data flows, protection, costs associated with inefficient trade facilitation, such as procedural delays, customs procedures, cargo handling, and the lack of predictability in interpretation of regulations, for example. But these are all costs to the business community. And if they are to benefit from RCEP, look, the government authorities must make it an effort and as a priority to address all these issues in a very consistent manner. We have Pemuda, but as I was involved with that a long time ago, but they were only able to succeed in getting that low-hanging fruits, but not some of the major. But I think RCEP provides an opportunity for Pemuda to work harder and go deeper into some other aspects of the constraints. Now, all this one I pointed out have negative effects on the global supply chain, and therefore reducing trade and facilitation costs will go a long way in terms of delivering substantive benefits to our business people, more than, and this is true, more than having reduced tariffs or elimination of tariffs. If you can liberalize trade facilitation measures, address all this, it'll be more liberalizing than having reduced tariffs. I've experienced this in the WTO, in ASEAN, and everything else. NTBs, for example, is a clear hurdle. Even in ASEAN, despite 2 decades of working on it, we have not actually achieved substantive success in removing non-tariff barriers. That's why intra-ASEAN trade remains very low at 24%. So it's ridiculous. So this is an area that I think under RCEP, the government has a very important role to work together with the government, with the private sector, to ascertain what are the non-tariff barriers they are facing and what must be done by government authorities to reduce these. And for this, I believe MITI, for example, which will be overseeing this agreement, it will be useful if you can also have a very specific mechanism or a desk within MITI, which monitors the NTBs in the region and consults the private sector and to see how this can be addressed. I mean, this is the way to sort of bring about effective utilization of the benefits under RCEP. And, and I mentioned already about the trade and investment facilitation efforts, which will also go a long way in terms of helping the business people to become more competitive. And I mean, these are some things that the government must do, but they have to work together. Private sector, especially the industry associations and government must work together. The one important area that we need to address together is ramping up the awareness part of the RCEP. We tend to have a lot of general presentations, seminars, roundtables, explaining what RCEP is like. I do not think, well, it is important, it is useful, but more importantly, I don't think the SMEs, the small companies in Malaysia, are going to read that the huge documents related. All they are interested in knowing, how is it going to help my product? Which means we need to have a very targeted approach in terms of sectors. And this is where government, industry, and industry must work together. Government can work together to address this. But more importantly, I would like to call upon the industry associations to also, because government hasn't got enough resources the government, the industry association also have to go a long way to really go down to specific details. Exactly what are the products, where are the advantages, what are the compliance requirements, how do we go about satisfying the rules of origin, and so on and so forth. This is very critical. And I've not seen, to be very frank, even during my time, we had a very general approach talking about the relevance and benefits, but we have not done a lot of developmental work in terms of preparing our companies to effectively leverage on the benefits that will come out of RCEP. This is one suggestion that I like to make, and I think the industries must take this seriously with the help of the government. So that is the ramping up of the awareness, the specific details of it must. So I hope the industry associations will have a definite program, not just talk about generally, but on a sectoral basis, Then you will find SMEs, the companies, will know exactly, they know there are benefits, how do they go about benefiting? Even rules of origin have to be explained. It's so technical that the poor industry guys will not understand. So you have to have case studies, you have to have examples. You must go down to in depth. Otherwise, it's going to be futile. And I can tell you the experience of ASEAN, in ASEAN preferential trading arrangement, and even in our FTAs on a bilateral basis, we did not benefit very much because we couldn't comply with the rules of origin. They had no clue. And some didn't want to take advantage of the preferential tariffs. Instead, they were prepared to export and pay the most favored nation duty. So you can see, that it is very critical, very important for us to go into details. And then finally, I think how many minutes do I have? I think I'm coming to the 20 minutes, right?
You have 4 minutes more. It's okay. Go ahead.
I'm rushing, I think, as I said, the important role of both government and the private sector is important. Now, I mentioned about a lot of bureaucratic delays, impediments, and all that. I think we must work together to improve the domestic policies, improve trade facilitation. We must improve product and market, we must be actively engaged in product and market development. We must maintain standard product qualities. Work needs to be done. Our research and development is important. And I think in terms of trade diversification, market diversification, it is extremely important that we work closely with MATRADE, because MATRADE is already, engaged in trade and market diversification programs. But what is lacking, and Dr. Shahreen, you may want to elaborate later, perhaps,
Sure.
is we must have a targeted approach to markets. We must have targeted products for promotion. Look at China; it's a huge market. I'm very optimistic about prospects in China, but China is not one single market. It's made up of many markets. But we need to find out which are the products which are relevant to certain provinces and what kind of promotional strategy that we should be taking. It's a kind of a targeted approach. But I've been saying it even when I was Deputy Secretary General to MATRADE and all those kind of things, more targeted. We must know our product, we have the supply capacity or not. Are we competitive or not? Do we have the revealed comparative advantage in that market or not? In order we have all that, then what needs to be done? I think MATRADE will be able to assist companies effectively if only we have a targeted, well-coordinated kind and integrated approach. And it cannot be just over 1 year. We have to have perhaps a 5-year period over where we try to develop the market overseas, for example, for which we need to have a program. We need to have a very specific program with a roadmap, milestones, and which can be reviewed over a period. I'm talking about the developmental work that needs to be done by the government together with the private sector. I think if we can do all this, I'm quite optimistic that we'll be one of the very significant beneficiaries of RCEP. With that, thank you very much. Of course, I'll be able to say more during the question and answer session, if there are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato Maniam. I'm sure the audience can see how passionate he is about talking about trade and his depth of experience. Dato Maniam has raised why it is so important for Malaysia to be part of RCEP and how important it is for government and private sector to work together. Look at the targeted play on how you can improve our performance. So there are definitely a lot of things that he touches there, and I think we'll elaborate more in our discussion session later. So thank you again, Dato Maniam, for a very, very interesting talk. Now, our next panelist is Tan Sri Dato Thian Lai. Let me just give a short introduction. Again, he has 34 years of experience in so many various capacity. His background is materials engineering with an MBA as well from the UK. Currently the president of the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers. He is also the board of directors of MIDA, MQA, member of Pemuda, and a former technical chairman for TVET. So, you know, interestingly enough, Dato Maniam has 33 years in government. Tan Sri has 34 years in the industry. I have 20 years in industry and 10 years in the government. So I spend right in the middle between the two of you. So again, you know, I think it's a very nice conversation and I look forward for the discussion later. So, and without further delay, I'd like to invite Tan Sri Dato Thian Lai. The floor is yours, the next 20 minutes. Thank you. Dato Tan Sri, your voice is not on.
On already.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good now. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I think this is the first time I present my speech during evening time, while energy at the lowest. Okay, Adjunct Professor Dr. Mohd Shahreen, Principal Global Entrepreneurs Exchange, Yang Bahagia Dato Tan Yusin, President Malaysia-China Chamber of Commerce, Yang Bahagia Dato M. Supperamaniam, very energetic just now. He presented very good coverage. Chief Advisor, Inside Think Tank, and a former ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all your patience during this evening time to listen my presentations. Good day to everyone. On behalf of FMM, I would like to say a big thank you to Malaysia-China Chamber of Commerce for the honor to participate in this webinar. Indeed, it's a good one. FMM has been a strong advocate of free trade agreements, especially regional free trade agreements, including RCEP. And this webinar is an important platform to bring together other like-minded public and private sector representatives to forge strong trade and investment cooperation to ensure mutually beneficial FTAs for all. 2020, next slide. 2020 and 2021 have been unprecedented challenges. There are people also mentions that where RCEP ratified, our industries or my company is still around or not. Because last year we were in MCO, now we were still under MCO. Don't know whether after this MCO are we still relevant or not. But be it, this is very challenging. As such, FMM greatly welcome the signing of the RCEP on November 15, 2020 by the Malaysian government during 37 ASEAN Summit. This, as mentioned by Dato Supperamaniam already, that is the biggest trade bloc, and for sure it will bring benefits to a lot of businesses and industries, especially for SMEs. Next slide. Slide 3. Ladies and gentlemen, signing the RCEP is significant achievement for Malaysia, but important is the rectification and approval. Because this is very important that without the rectification and approval, it's just on paper only. But bear in mind that other countries already signed, and we need to speed up. As you are aware, RCEP will enter into force with 6 ASEAN members. Just now already mentioned that by Dr. Shahreen. There are 3 countries already ratified and approved, and Malaysia is going to do so by first quarter of 2022. Slide 4, please. Okay, more than ever, manufacturers must hit the pressing call to go beyond domestic borders to seek opportunities in markets that possesses strong growth potential, especially when Malaysia was ranked 7. Not too bad lah. Malaysia was ranked 7 among the trading partners with the 14 RCEP members. But in actual fact, Malaysia has more resources, should be do better than this. Slide 5. Next slide. From our survey, FMA together with MIE, we discovered that more than 54% of our respondents say that the open market expansion is the most popular business strategy in the next 6 months or so. This will include establishing business continuity plans by means of securing alternative source of supplies and evaluating nearshore options to shorten supply chains and increase proximity to suppliers. Next slide. Slide 6. Okay. While we were aware about the benefit of RCEP among the participating countries, the critical question now is how can businesses in Malaysia prepare themselves for RCEP? Bear in mind that RCEP start negotiation until now already 8 years. Are we ready? And what are the key planning or strategies they need to deploy to benefit from this mega FTA and compete with businesses from the 14 other participating countries? Please take note, we are competing with the rest of the 14 countries, including China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, all are advanced country. Slide 7. As a key planning for companies and strategies, the companies will need to acquire an understanding of the RCEP to identify the areas where the trade costs could be reduced and competitive advantages could be gained in the new market with greater access, as well as review their current supply chains to determine if there is any opportunity to expand into regions' growing markets. This is important. By way of strategy, companies will need to perform an impact assessment. You need to have an analysis to determine the benefits available, whether you can compete or not. Another important point is to note is that companies need to know the harmonized commodity description and coding system, HS code. This is a lot. There are plenty of this. We need to be very careful on this. This HS code of our country and of the target country for goods that they intend to export. Companies should also understand the rules of origin. Just now Dato already mentioned, the rule of origins is a lot also under this RCEP. Be it based on regional value content, it means it's RVC, regional value content, or substantial transformation to determine if their products qualify for preferential treatment. Only goods original in the RCEP region meeting the ROO criteria will be granted duty-free or reduced rate of duty when exported to regional partners. If the exported products do not comply, if do not comply with the ROO, the duty-free treatment will be denied, and therefore companies will lose out. You must take note on this. As such, companies will need to better understand the source of their inputs. I repeat, you must better understand the source of their inputs in order to apply the correct ROO to reap the maximum benefits from this free trade agreement, from this RCEP. Slide 8. It will probably be less than a year before the FTA is fully ratified by 15 countries. I think it will be quite soon. By the time to start getting ready actually is by now. Taking a forward-thinking approach will be critical to effectively maximize the benefits available to our businesses once the world's largest free trade pact is fully implemented. As such, the second planning would require companies to understand, plan, and determine the source of their raw materials and intermediate goods To accomplish this plan, it is therefore important for companies to participate. I would like to say to participate in trade promotion activities, targeted trade promotion activities, and seek reputable local distributors in your exporting countries in this region, in RCEP region, as part of the strategy to enable greater inclusion in global supply chains. When it comes to trade promotion activities, companies are encouraged to participate in the business matching. There are many business matching being carried out by many countries. Because of MCO, this thing has been reduced. Or network events organized by relevant chambers or associations or even government ministries who are having close connection with the foreign or overseas chambers and associations. For example, FMM is very often approached by foreign embassies and high commissions based in Malaysia to organize webinars. Now these are called a lot of webinars. Previously, there are a lot of face-to-face discussion on doing business with their countries, as well as a business matching session. Thus, it's very important for companies to take part in these trade promotion activities to get to know the opportunities offered by these countries as part of the strategy to reap the benefits of the FTA. Slide 9. Thirdly, as an agreement may not be easy to be interpreted by companies. It is therefore important to leverage on assistance offered by relevant ministries and agencies, be it MITI, MATRADE, SME Corp, or even My IPO. To cite an example that many of us may not aware, there are a total of 3 laws that need to be amended for RCEP to complete its domestic ratification process, which are number 1, copyright, number 2, patents, and number 3, trademarks act. As such, companies are advised to seek further understanding with the relevant ministries and agencies or to participate the public consultation organized by these agencies to contribute their inputs. Ladies and gentlemen, the subsequent slide is the key planning and strategies to be undertaken by companies. I shall now move on to the industries planning and strategies. For industries, the key planning and strategies as follow. Competition is not new to businesses in Malaysia. Just now, Dato Supperamaniam mentioned that competition when you sign RCEP is very severe, especially China. And remember, China has so many SMEs that they are so competitive. As what we said, as majority of Malaysia trade is already covered by 7 bilateral FTAs and 7 regional FTA, and thus we have the certain experience. SMEs who are forming about 98.5% of business establishments in Malaysia are well prepared to take on further opening of domestic markets. This one is a bit of question mark. Some will be feel doubtful that the SMEs, if they are so competitive, why the total export for SMEs only take up about 20%. So, and the RCEP, total our external trade with RCEP is about, our business export among the RCEP is about 60%. We need to take note of SMEs with increased commercial opportunities and partnerships through the chapter on economic and technical cooperation called Ecotech and SMEs. In this regard, industries would need to plan on how they should work with the government through relevant chambers or associations in conveying their needs, be it in the form of incentive or development programs, in order to allow the government to take necessary measures in enhancing the capacity of local SMEs to take advantage of the agreement. Example, in the Malaysia-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, for instance, Malaysia industry have clearly benefited from roving experts and industrial training programs in the plastic, metal, and automotive sectors. So, cooperation programs can be incorporated into RCEP to assist SMEs in specific industries, example, biotechnology and ICT, to further enhance their export capabilities and resilience. provision of consultants to promote the export capability of SMEs, including industrial attachments and training for the staff of SMEs, will further enhance bilateral relations in the spirit of FTA. I go for slide 12. Subsequently, industries should also plan for the manpower reskilling and upskilling as part of their strategy to upgrade the industry capabilities, such as via the industry forward programs, which FMA has been continuously advocating for the adoption of Industry 4.0 by manufacturers, especially SMEs, as we truly believe Industry 4.0 will allow Malaysian SMEs or mid-tier companies to reduce their dependency on labor, especially currently until today, a lot of SMEs and even mid-tier and large companies are over-dependent on foreign workers. And this, the increase, the productivity is the key. With the advanced manufacturing ecosystem and fraternity business policy coupled with good infrastructure, it will further reposition Malaysia as an attractive and competitive place of doing business, and also a gateway to regional market and to attract more quality FDIs or even retain the existing investments. Slide 13. Lastly, on the key planning and strategy for industries, we know that there is a chapter on trade remedies of RCEP, whereby there is expected to be more protection based on safeguards and anti-dumping measures imposed should there be need for legal response. This chapter is not even found in the ASEAN Australia New Zealand FTA. Thus, given the increasing petitions filed by domestic industry in Malaysia relating to the dumping of foreign goods into Malaysia, rendering local manufacturers uncompetitive, and a rising anti-dumping and anti-subsidy investigation carried out by foreign countries for goods exported from Malaysia with origin from other countries have resulted in Malaysia genuine exporters being imposed with anti-dumping duties for their exports. It is therefore important for industries to obtain an overview. Please note, to obtain an overview of trade remedies and communicate or convey their concern with MITI and relevant chambers or associations to understand or to explore how the benefit of trade remedies can help you to protect the domestic industry and restore level playing field. Now, free trade is to be free and fair. This will also help to determine if the industries are affected and what are the next steps to be taken. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, noting that the RCEP has 20 chapters which cover 14,000 pages. Please take note. It's at 14,000 pages of a legal text. Move to the next slide. Involving tariffs scheduled from 15 countries. It is therefore important to prepare business in the region to take advantage of RCEP once it is implemented. As such, FMO on its part has launched a series of webinars on RCEP. I would like to mention this webinar is not only on general. We must be very specific and targeted on RCEP to assist companies to identify the potential opportunities and gaps on some of the new areas in this FTA, such as the impact on intellectual property and rules around digital economy, to ensure that Malaysian businesses maximize the gains and minimize any possible losses from the FTA. Please take note, you must analyze carefully the gaps. Despite uncertainty caused by COVID-19 pandemic and its essential economic repercussions, markets such as Asia remain the key to grow. FMO representing a private sector in Malaysia has pushed for the early ratification of RCEP. I believe all other associations like MCCC also will do so. Has put for this early ratification of RCEP, as we firmly believe that regional trade agreements are a critical trade tool to address unprecedented challenges posed by COVID-19. So in conclusion, the recent COVID-19 pandemic has forced many companies in Asia Pacific to start thinking about long-term supply chain planning and therefore building a more resilient supply chain capable of adapting and growing in an increasingly complex economy. Please note, now the whole global trade has become very, very complex. And FMM believes that RCEP is an important trade tool that will contribute. And not only FMM, I believe all the trade associations and chambers will believe that RCEP is a very important trade tool. Once again, I thank the organizers for inviting FMM, especially me, to this webinar. And I'm confident that such forums by MCCC and with related organizations will greatly contribute to formulating Malaysia's trade recovery efforts. Thank you, the organizers, for allowing me to share my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Ladies and gentlemen, so we've heard from Tan Sri, from the industry, how we should prepare ourselves. The planning involves the strategy and why industry should be concerned. FMM itself is conducting a lot of seminars to engage in industry and get industry to participate and be aware at a very micro level, to be aware what are the challenges and what are the opportunities we will face. So now we're going to go into this last part of our session, which is our question and answer session. And this is where we're going to have both the panelists, to pose the question to get more insight. Now, I just want to add a bit of structure to this session. So if we understand RCEP and how RCEP is going to impact, us here means how it impacts country, Malaysia, how it impacts businesses, and how it impacts individuals. So individuals as, whether we are a consumer or how we shall prepare ourselves individually in terms of, facing with this globalized world. And like Dato Maniam suggested earlier, globalization is coming in. We have to be part of the bandwagon. It's not an option to not be part of it, but we need to be able to tread, entering into RCEP and all this multilateral trade agreement with, ourselves, preparing ourselves for it, not just leaving it to chance. So with that, there are three components that we want to talk about. One is the impact to the country. And with that, there is a question here. Should China-US trade war escalate? Will it likely to impact RCEP progress? Dato Maniam, maybe this is something that you may have some opinion on.
Well, the first observation that I want to make is you have to acknowledge, recognize that Asia is the growth center. Asia on the rise. That has to be accepted. The tension between US and China, well, it is there and it's not going to go away soon, right? Even with the change of presidency, we're not, please do not expect all the issues will be solved. The tension will continue. I think for Malaysia and for ASEAN, the strategy would be already, the tensions had caused the business community to rethink and to relocate some of the operations. And I think in ASEAN, I'm told that some countries have actually got serious indications of companies wanting to be relocated. That's important. But I also must remember that Malaysia is very dependent on China for exports, especially for exports of intermediate products, components to be sent to China, which is then incorporated into finished products over there and exported to US and other countries. Now, the US-China tension will invariably impact our exports of those items to China.
So the question, Dato, will the US-China trade war impact RCEP in the sense that, we still have, out of 15, only 3 has ratified. So we have another 12 countries has not fully ratified yet. Now, will the 12 other countries, get cold feet?
Let me be very frank.
Yeah.
Already there are some concerns in Australia and New Zealand in terms of the ratification process. One of the reasons could be the political developments in Myanmar, human rights issues, democracy, which is very close to the US, for example. And remember, Australia in particular, I always call them the deputy sheriff of United States.
Okay.
They're very politically aligned to the UN. So this could be one, the US could work on Australia to delay the ratification process.
So geopolitical can impact RCEP.
It can, but we need to find a strategy to to avoid that impact. Now, even if Australia doesn't ratify RCEP,
yeah.
But if we have 6 ASEAN countries, we should be easy because it's our initiative, ASEAN initiative. We have 6, and you have China, you have Japan, and you just need one more dialogue partner. We can go ahead. So what? But as I said, at the end of the day, Australia will realize, already they're beginning to realize, that the bilateral tensions between Australia and China is costing Australia a lot of losses.
So if I hear you correctly, Dato, so, if you're looking at RCEP as a trading bloc, and, the main contributor to this trading bloc is the ASEAN, the 10 ASEAN nation, and China being one of the biggest, economy, that alone spell a lot of benefit for ASEAN countries. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I have no doubt at all. As I mentioned, that Asia is the growth center and it will continue to be for the next decade.
Right.
That's where the opportunities are.
So you see,
of course, there will be, some kind of disruptions as a result of the bilateral, tension between China and US. But there are other opportunities. There are many other opportunities. But even American business sector is not terribly enthusiastic about US taking such a hard stand on China.
What about, I'm just extending that discussion, what about, the current maritime claims by China? Will that also derail RCEP?
One of the challenges, I didn't want to mention it because I didn't have time. If you want East Asia in particular to grow smoothly, it is inevitable that the South China Sea dispute must be settled amicably.
Right.
Amicably. And China, we have sent this message. I say we means the governments in ASEAN have sent a very strong message to China that we don't want to see the high level of economic engagement, cooperation in the economic area to be disrupted as a result of this South China Sea issue.
So would it be fair? Would it be fair to say that the relationship between ASEAN and China actually is more impactful to the relationship or the success of RCEP compared to the US-China tension?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I know China will definitely be a very important driver of regional integration in East Asia through RCEP. They're not part of TPP. They're not part of CPTPP, right? They were excluded and from that agreement, even the original TPPA. So, but here, they will be a very strong driver. So much so, a lot of people seem to think that RCEP is the initiative of China. It is not.
Right.
They play a very important role, leadership role, yes, but we need them as well because they are an important market for ASEAN countries and also for economic. And I can tell you the amount of economic initiatives, that are in place between ASEAN and China, numerous. Clear opportunities, partnerships, and they are very, very concrete in terms of the progress they want to achieve in ASEAN. They want to work closely with ASEAN. RCEP is a platform, yes, but again, ASEAN is yet another platform for them to work on. So
related to that question, Dato, will China insist on using Chinese currency
Well, I think that's going to take a long time. Already, I mean, the yuan is not an international currency. But remember, there are some countries already have what we call swap arrangements on a bilateral basis. No, we could deal with yuan, Malaysian ringgit and all that. We have got bilateral, swap arrangements. But whether or not the yuan will become an international currency in the near future, that is, of course, I cannot look into the crystal ball, but it's going to take a long time because there are some concerns that among the Chinese leaders, that the financial system in China is not that strong yet. They were closed for a long time, and they want to build up the resilience of the the financial system in China before they even talk about,
I like to bring Tan Sri into this discussion. Tan Sri, do you think there are any significant concern from the industry that will hold back Malaysia from ratifying the RCEP?
Actually, the RCEP, the benefit is outweighed than all other things are. So we believe that the RCEP countries, these 15 countries, they will continue with this RCEP. Even with this, Malaysia side also need to get prepared because our SMEs have been here. Although we have so many SMEs, but there is one fact that we need to admit: our SMEs export is still at a lower portion. It's not big enough. That's why among the RCEP countries, benefits definitely are more. That is what I can say.
So you're saying there's more benefit to Malaysia as a country to be part of RCEP, but just what we mentioned earlier, India decided to pull out for what various reasons, right? For various reasons. So now, from Malaysian perspective, especially from Malaysian industry perspective, are there any concerns about RCEP?
You see, we cannot understand why India pull out from this. But once you pull out from this, you are not at the round table at the beginning stage to set your rules. Okay, so right now it's like that. When you are inside this RCEP, you are getting prepared to compete. That's why Malaysia SMEs, after joining this RCEP and after ratify, we will be able to live up to our expectations, how to compete by using latest IR 4.0 and also using latest advanced technology. If India they join in letters, we are already able to equip with our technologies, then we can compete better than them.
Interesting, you bring technology into it. I'm going to come back on technology and how technology is going to be a differentiator for our industry. But from your perspective, Tan Sri, industry out there, the moment you open up the economy, you're going to have, it's not just a one-way traffic. It's not like you are able to easily go into other market, but it also means that there are a competitor coming into your market. How ready is our industry to compete?
Yeah, I want to say is that you look at all advanced countries, they are majorities of the whole economic ecosystem also make up of SMEs. So are we Malaysians would like, when we become advanced countries, are our SMEs able to compete or not? This is the things that now our SMEs need to really strategize by now. RCEP have been
Are they ready now to compete, Tan Sri? Are they ready now to compete?
Competition is not new, okay, to Malaysian markets. Although currently SMEs export about 30% of total export, about per month about 100 billion, or 1 year maybe about 1 trillion of trade. Okay, I can say that at this moment some of the SMEs are not ready. based
What can they
on
do?
our FMM. They are
What
not
should
ready.
they do?
Now is like that. Are they able to look at their talents development or not? Number one.
Talents number one, okay.
Okay. Don't only look at foreign workers already. Okay. Number three, are they prepared to invest technology? So this also involve on cost. So this one that the government also play a role, and together with the banks also play a role. The whole ecosystem must be right for the SMEs. Must start from here and start from now.
Agree. So you know, it's a system problem, isn't it? I mean, you cannot
Yes.
be just government. It has to be government plus industry plus the banking system.
Yes, correct.
You know, and we need to really embrace technology, and I think that's where you see MITI is pushing a lot on Industry 4.0, because we cannot rely on foreign labor. We need the only way to compete when we don't have, you know, our country is like at 32 million. Our neighbors are at least from 2 to 10 times bigger than us by population, 2 to 10 times, right? And therefore they have access to cheap labor compared to us. So the only way to compete against cheap labor is technology. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, lah.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So
we need a technology transformation.
Right.
Through digitalizations. But what is a commitment, either at the government side or from the private sector side? So talk is easy. So I want to invest in technologies, but you do not implement, and the ecosystem, if let's say it's not there, the government must give a conducive environment for all the industries to make changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dato, please.
Sorry. My own experience in terms of negotiations shows that trade liberalization will definitely bring gains, but also can marginalize some of the SMEs and so on. So our position, at least during my time, has been to adopt what we call progressive liberalization. Right. Progressive meaning that, you know, if you know that some sectors or subsectors of the economy are not prepared, are not ready, they don't have the capacity and so on and so forth, then we will need to ask for flexibilities. We need to ask for flexibility, and we need to build up their capacity, which will take a lot of time. So we don't have to agree completely to everything that the developed economies ask us in terms of our negotiation.
Right.
We have to also be cognizant of the difficulties of our local companies. So it has to be we are for liberalization. Malaysia must liberalize, yes. You know, otherwise we can't move forward. We are not. We don't oppose liberal, but we have to really have this kind of cost-benefit analysis, effect evaluation, and see how they can be helped, capacity building. And I can tell you, RCEP is a well thought out agreement, unlike, and if I compare with the CPTP, because RCEP consists of 10 ASEAN economies which are at different levels of development, diversity, technological development, you know, human resource development, and so on. So you cannot expect the ASEAN poorer economies to completely come on board, right?
Dato, so, I like that point, Dato. I want to interject on that point, because, you know, it is you know, although it's a common agreement, but between members, 15 members who are not of equal economic status.
Yes.
Who's going to benefit the most?
Obviously, in any agreement, those who have the comparative and competitive advantage and who have put in place structural reforms in terms of the economy, they are well placed to benefit from the liberalization.
What happens if you don't have?
If you don't have, like Cambodia, for example, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam has improved a lot, Myanmar, they cannot. And that is why even in ASEAN, we had a two-tiered approach. While the more developed economies of ASEAN move a little bit faster in terms of commitments, they were given a longer period to come on board, taking into account their capacity. And that's why ASEAN is
about 20 years period, right, for ASEAN.
Yes, it is 20.
You see, like tariff elimination is spread over 20 years. And I like RCEP simply because it has really taken into account the sensitivities and difficulties of the poorer economies. And it is in the mandate. The political mandate is very clear. Flexibilities to be accorded. So that, one of the objectives is to reduce the gap of development between the richer economies, developed economies, and the poorer. Even in ASEAN, we have done the same thing. Of course, we can't move as fast as we want. I remember Singapore used to tell us, hey, we better move fast, otherwise we cannot, Look, in a family, in a family, you have some, the weak guys and you have strong guys. The weaker guys will have to be helped to come on board. It cannot be like an express train. And that's why ASEAN has survived for so long. If we are to, to rush and, to just don't care about other members of ASEAN who are in a different state, we are gone. They're gone. In that,
I agree with you, Dato, on that. How does that then impact the individuals? We're gonna have this situation where you reduce your tariff. Presumably, by reducing tariff, then your product that's coming from abroad will be cheaper, so it'll be beneficial for the people on the street, I presume, right? Now, but does that mean that cheaper product from China will kill our less competitive product locally?
Well, they can have the effect. I recall the ASEAN plus China FTA, right? Indonesia, in fact, was very unhappy. But some background noise. Indonesia was not at all happy because they felt threatened.
Okay.
They felt threatened. And the same thing I can say about India, why they did not come into RCEP, because they felt threatened by cheaper imports from China, cheaper agricultural and dairy products from Australia, New Zealand, and there were other issues which were not really acceptable to India. That's why they didn't come part of it. Better not to be part of the agreement.
But that challenge is real.
Huh?
But that challenge is real.
No, of course it's real. China is supposed to, to be a threat to a lot of economies. But let's put it this way. Our ASEAN plus China agreement, plus many other economic initiatives that we have concluded with China, provides a very strong foundation. It's not just trade alone. It's not.
I like that point. I'm going to stop you there because, it is not trade alone. I think this is where I'm trying to get to, because when you look at the RCEP document, it says, trade, export, import, investment, plus there are the e-commerce, the country of origins, the IP protection. So there are a lot of other things that come along.
Even SME, there's one specific chapter.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where, can we say this is where the normal FTA between country to country, unilateral FTA, if you like, between countries where it is limited to just trade tariff. But here, it is beyond trade. It is actually including a lot of other things that impacted trade and investment.
Yeah, I mean, as we, as Tan Sri So has mentioned, I also mentioned, that RCEP has got a very broad mandate. Its objectives are broad. It is not just trade expansion. It's also to broaden and deepen economic integration. It is also to promote sustainable growth, sustainable inclusive growth. And it also talks about sharing of benefits like our shared prosperity concept.
Yeah.
So, it has got a lot of broad objectives. And I hope that if it is implemented effectively, and over the years, it cannot be done immediately. And this is where RCEP document is a living document.
Right.
It does not preclude changes from being made to the existing agreement, whether it's in tariffs or whether in many other areas as well. As we go along, countries become more, they progress, they become more developed, and they may be more willing to undertake additional reforms. And the RCEP agreement, in fact, maybe in 20 years' time, it will be a fantastic agreement for those objectives that I outlined. The supply chain, production networks, and all that. It's going to get.
I like to bring Tan Sri on this because so, for example, if you are in Malaysia and you're competing, with the cheaper countries, more cheap labor, and you cannot compete on that, you got to go to technology, to look at, how to reduce your costs and therefore, automation and so on. So embracing Industry 4.0. But at the same time, industry that, value intellectual properties, IPs. This is our protection of our IPs now become better because now it can go across the whole block. So, Tan Sri, how much of our industry are actually, creating values that will be significant in this post-RCEP situation? Are we into this high-tech industry? Are we moving the industry forward? Are we stuck in the older traditional industry?
Malaysia are still halfway. We are not at the high value creation nation yet because of our first thing, technology, second, our productivity, and thirdly is our talents. So in order for us to create high value content products, we have only one choice. That is our talents must be ready, must be able to contribute towards high income nations. At the same time, we are able to bring in all the technologies. But at the moment, like Singapore, you can say that the cost is very high, but their unique costs compared to us, they are much higher and better than us. Why? Because of productivity. So I can say that is we are moving towards high value creation nations, but we are still far behind.
So if I hear you correctly, Tan Sri, so Malaysia, our industry needs to embrace technology. We need to develop our talents to face the eventuality of RCEP become more prevalent. We got to prepare ourselves, whether we like it or not. That is something that we have to do in order to survive post RCEP. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think a fair statement on this. I want to say is that Malaysia exports about 40% still over dependent on E&E. E&E come from where? From all these multinationals. Any of the Malaysian-made companies is in this semiconductor industry strongly compete in the world. So that's why we are more on the supply chain side. We are more at the supply chain at this level. That's why the vendor development program that BT last time put in place, we need to further develop so that we can develop our local SMEs and follow them throughout the world, and they become competitive. That's why the SMEs there are a lot of room need to improve. Although we can compete, but we are not there to compete with those advanced countries yet.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to stop you there. Datuk Maniam, you wanted to say something?
No, it's great. I think
okay. Because I have a lot of questions down there, which is, it's very exciting. I know we have another few more minutes left. I love to extend this discussion further. It looks like we are really,
what were the questions that were asked by the participants?
Yeah, so some of them I've asked, but there are questions on e-commerce chapter in RCEP will impose binding rules that will force developing nations to give away data and highly priced industrial resource to free big companies in Japan, China and so on. This will seriously affect millions of small independent offline retailers and street vendors, as well as SME manufacturing sector workers, as digital product will compete with physical goods made in developing countries. So I presume the question is, will this curtail our small players that's just getting into this area in the digital space?
I think we'll have to look at it this way. There are certainly opportunities that will arise from digitalization and e-commerce, and we have benefited a lot from e-commerce. The figures show that it has increased substantially, and it's also helped a lot of in terms of livelihood when the pandemic occurred and all that. But one needs to be very careful. Of course, there will be advantages, there will be benefits, but there are also challenges in terms of being part of that digital economy or e-commerce. Like I remember when Alibaba came into Malaysia and established the digital free trade zone. Now, we don't want to see a situation where Alibaba's company becomes the main platform and everybody else plays a subsidiary role. So you have to be fair to the local people, so considerations like that. And there are problems associated with storage of data. You know, this is a very sensitive issue in the discussions on digital economy, wherever you go. You know, there are some countries which feel that they want to have the right to have the storage in their own country. And there are also the problems like cross flow of data. They don't want restrictions, you know. So there are some very critical issues. And then cyber security, for example, you know, in digital economy. I mean, these are some very real issues which have to be looked at very, very carefully. And I don't want to see, whilst there are opportunities, there are companies which are able to cope with it and can, you know, benefit, and then you leave behind a lot of SMEs who are not able to benefit. And I don't think that is a fair way. We're going to have a socio-economic problem if that is going to happen.
Right.
So I think we need to be very mindful of the difficulties, problems faced by the small guys, you know. And this e-commerce and digital, you know, they can't compete with the big firm. They don't have the resources. They don't have the management skills. They don't have financial resources and all that. So how do you get this one? How do you get all these small guys jump into this technology arena, you know? And many SMEs told me that they're not so interested in overall technology as such, but they're interested more in applications, which will get them to move faster, you know, instead of understanding the whole technology. And this is where I think RCEP can provide a lot of opportunity, especially vis-a-vis China. Vis-a-vis China. And I presented a paper in China where the prospects are in terms of working together with Tencent, Alibaba, JD, you know, group and things like that, you know, setting up platforms and then coming over to Malaysia to set up partnerships, capital.
So Dato, if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is our SMI, SME must embrace e-commerce to get more channels and access to markets. Is that right?
There is no doubt that e-commerce, if you're an exporter, SME has got interest in exporting or it's a potential to export. You know, e-commerce platform is one of the surest ways of expanding your or seeking markets overseas, but that is a trend. We cannot move away from that.
So, sorry, to cut you there because we have we just crossed our 30 minutes. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to roll out, but just one last question to Tan Sri. So we got 98% of our industry out there of 1.2 million companies are SMI, SME. 1%. You know, about 1.5% are mid-tiers and less than 0.5% are the large corporation. So I presume the large corporation and the mid-tiers, they are a bit more capable in terms of facing competition. The 98% are the one, like, you know, Dato Maniam just said, you know, are the one that's going to face, you know, this open market, and they need to embrace technology either to be competitive or look at new channels in order, you know, finding potential partners in the rest of the 15 other member participating countries. That's where MATRADE can help to look at all the coordination. But the question for Tan Sri is basically this. So is there a possibility at all for the bigger, you know, large corporation, multinational, the mid-tier, to work with a smaller player in terms of a consortium to help industry move forward?
Yeah, possible. I still look at another idea is that Malaysian SMEs, they can have a strategic partnership through M&A, merger and acquisition, with the China SMEs that they are good one, with high technology one, rather than the SMEs from China then come to Malaysia and invest, then Malaysia SME cannot compete. Why not? The MCCC can play a role to bring in China SMEs, work with Malaysian SMEs and through M&A, and focus on certain segments that is using the technology type, like e-commerce, telecommunications, green energies, and all sorts of this latest technology. I believe that through M&A with the China SMEs. But if you allow the China SME to come here, the way they work is different from Malaysian SMEs.
Thank you, Tan Sri.
This is my advice to MCCC. Maybe Dato Tan, you can take the lead to bring all the investors or SME come to Malaysia and do M&A and work together, become a big consortium.
Thank you, Tan Sri. So we are just 3 minutes past our 30 minutes mark. So, you know, I know we barely scratch. I think Dato Tan also, I think, is eager to say something. So, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to give 1 minute to each panelist to just summarize your thoughts before we wrap up. So I'm going to start with Dato Maniam, please.
Well, 1 or 2 minutes, yeah, okay.
Yes.
I mean, we talked a lot about how important it is to leverage, with RCEP in order to benefit. But as I mentioned, the benefits are quite significant, and the losses will be there, risk will be there, downside risk will be there. We need to manage that. We need to be cognizant of it and manage that. But one point that I didn't mention, and Tan Sri saw, I think this is particularly, it has been in my mind for a long time. When you talk about RCEP, taking advantage of opportunities at the private sector level, and I mean, I've been working quite closely with the Chinese chamber in China, for example. We even set up what we call the ASEAN-China Chambers of Commerce and Industry, right? And this is part of the networking. And then to what extent our networking has been established between industry associations with other countries, for example. I think in terms of Japan, we have Majika, Jamaica, and all that. That's at the formal level. Australia and New Zealand, I don't see any kind of networking between business industry associations with these countries. They're members of RCEP. So what I'm trying to say is that that needs to be an enhanced cooperation, networking with the entities overseas in the RCEP region, chambers of commerce.
And that is something that countries, government can do.
Yeah, it is something that
government can assist.
Yes, that's where I was thinking that and in many areas, government and private sector must work in concert. Malaysia incorporated concept, even in terms of winning projects and all.
Thank you, Dato Maniam. Very great advice. Tan Sri, please.
My advice is Malaysians companies as SMEs don't be domestic focused and domestic centered. Now is a global village and called borderless world. Important is how do you equip yourself by having your mindset or paradigm shift to prepare for the futures. If you do not prepare now, you will wipe out in the near futures. Now is your time to decide to compete or not to compete.
Thank you. Thank you, Tan Sri. Dato Tan, you wanted to say something. I know you're eager to say something.
No, I just want to say that this webinar, today's session is a very high quality, as somebody commented, because we are not talking about macro. We actually go into detail, into the potential of different industry will get affected this way or another. But I also browse through the questions, many very interesting questions. It is actually a regret that we don't have time to handle them. But as they say, this is a series, so we may have other sessions coming up later. And also, thanks, Tan Sri So's suggestion. I think we definitely want to work with FMM. I think we all can get together and work something out for something to benefit the country. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dato Tan. Again, thank you to our great panelists, Dato Supperamaniam and Tan Sri So. Lai for participating.
Maybe you should take a group picture before we.
Yes, we will do that. Just before that, I just want to do some closing points before we take our closing pictures together. Yeah. Again, as Dato Tan said, apologize that we could not answer every single line of the question. There's a lot of them. I tried my best to really summarize many of them, but as Dato Tan said, this is a series of roundtable by MCCC. So look forward for all the future sessions that we're going to have. Do participate with us. There are questions about where we can find more information from about RCEP, and I think MITI is a good resource. If not, the Trade Association, FMM, Malaysia-China Chamber of Commerce. I think industry out there, please reach out because there are millions of industry and there's a handful of associations. It's very difficult for association to go and run and find everyone. It's easier for companies to come to association, to agency and government, so that the more we have together, the more we gather together, the more we can work, in unison to address a lot of issues. Now, rightly pointed out, I think you think about RCEP, you got to think about an open, globalized economy. understand what happened to a country like Myanmar, for example, at one point was a darling of ASEAN, and when they were, moving out from being in a globalized economy, they set the economy behind. We can't afford. There will be challenges, but I don't think you have an option not to participate in a globalized economy. But what is wrong is when you don't prepare yourself to face the incoming challenges. That is, I think, key. And I think that Maniam has spent a lot of time talking about the potential of really understanding our strengths and understanding our opportunities out there that we can benefit, understand the threat and minimize the threat as much as we could, prepare our industry, and the cooperation between government and the industry is so crucial for us as a nation to move forward. So with that, I thank the panelists again, and I thank all the participants who has joined us in this session. And hopefully we'll see you again in the coming session roundtable with MCCC. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
You have taken the photograph already?
I think organizer can take.
Organizer can.
Three source suggestion.
Yeah, ready.
Honey, you better take a picture.
Yeah, taken.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, smile. Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
All right,
thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Until we meet
Thank
again.
you. Yeah.
All the
Okay.
best.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.